probably the part that is the most fun. We are to the, hey guys, we are to what I consider one of the hardest parts, one of the parts that you're going to not find a lot of consensus about. You're going to find a lot of people being very general and vague and not really saying what it's about. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you what I think it is. I'm going to be very specific and very direct. Whether I'm right or not, we don't know. Okay, this is just my theory. This is my brother's theory. We have believed this for a very long time. The more we study it, the more we like the theory. But that's all it is. When you get to that section, we're talking about the 10 burdens here, and you start off with Babylon, the burden of Babylon. And why have I been making such a big deal about this? Well, because the whole point in this class is to figure out who the harlot is in the book of Revelation. That's kind of what we're doing. This is a class for Isaiah as it pertains to the book of Revelation. And Babylon is the mother of harlots there in the book of Revelation. So these two have got to be at least loosely related. So that's why we're going to spend so much time looking at who Babylon is. Now, before we start, I have a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a side track here that I promise is very relevant. We'll come back into it. It's going to take a few minutes, but I think this is super important to realize what's going on here. And the way I like to start this off is ask the question, do we think that somebody besides Paul wrote the book of Hebrews? Do we think that?
Yes.
I've heard that. I never heard that.
Why? Give me a reason why, because I agree.
Well, we don't. I don't know. When I read it, I think Paul, but when I read about it, they say no. We don't know.
Right? We don't know. That's
some guesses.
But what are some of the reasons why we think it may not be him? What's the most obvious one that everybody brings up all the time?
I don't remember.
He doesn't sign it. He signs all the rest of his books.
Yes, that.
Right. It's a very common one, and it makes a lot of sense. Could he have just forgotten? I don't know. The guy's like crazy responsible and inspired for him to not sign it where he signs all the rest of them. To me, that's unlikely. I don't think it was him. It's not that big a deal if it was or wasn't, but I don't think it was him. But I'm going to give you a second reason why I don't think it was him. And again, I promise this will come back into Isaiah chapter 13. These two topics seem completely unrelated. What was Paul assigned?
The Gentiles.
The Gentiles, right? I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I am the apostle to the uncircumcision. Paul writing to the Roman Christians, for I speak to you Gentiles, you non-Jews. They're Christian, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles. And Galatia is right here on the map. It says Galatia, so you can come look. This is the middle of Turkey. The gospel of the uncircumcision was committed to me. That's Paul talking. Paul is saying, I am the apostle to the Gentiles. He says it a couple of times here. Just as, and this is still Paul talking, just as the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter. Paul is assigned the Gentiles. Peter is assigned the Jews. Right? You've probably heard that a lot in your lives growing up, right? For he that wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles. Peter's job is to write to the Hebrews. And I'm not saying Peter wrote the book of Hebrews. Okay, I don't think many people think that, but could have been him. But Paul was to the Gentiles. James, Cephas is Peter. John, to me, to Paul, they gave that they should go to the heathen, to the Gentiles, to the uncircumcised. And Peter would go to the Jews. He would stay put. He would stay in Jerusalem and be the apostle to the Jews. He was the apostle in Jerusalem. Here are some examples in the Bible of Peter's leadership in Jerusalem. Now, as we're going through this, don't fill up your brain with what was happening here. The only part I want you to focus on is in Jerusalem or in Judea. Just forget what he's doing. You already know all this stuff anyway. Just focus on where Peter was doing it. In Acts 1, they're replacing Judas. They have this big meeting. He's kind of heading it up. Where does that take place? I want to hear you say it. In Jerusalem. Acts chapter 2. Should be one of your most familiar chapters in all the Bible. The very first Christian sermon, Church of Christ start thing going on. Where did that happen?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Happens in Jerusalem. 3,000 people were baptized into the church. Bam, the day of Pentecost. That was a big event. Lots of Old Testament prophecies pointing to that specific event. Peter was the preacher there because he was the apostle to the Jews, and all those people were Jews. They converted to Christianity. Acts chapter 3. We're just going to keep going here. Peter heals the lame man. He's at the temple gate. He's healing the lame man. Where's the temple? Jerusalem. Where was Peter the apostle of? Jerusalem. And later on in Acts chapter 3, he's in Solomon's portico. You know what that is? It's like the porch of the temple, which is in Jerusalem. Peter has to go. They're arrested. Peter and John, they're arrested, and they have to go before the Sanhedrin Council. Where's the Sanhedrin Council?
Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. He's got some issues going on in his congregation, his local congregation, because he's an elder. You find that out in 1 Peter. He's an elder of his congregation. He has to handle some people. Ananias and Sapphira, we're familiar with that story. That's at the church in Jerusalem. Acts chapter 5. Peter and the apostles continued to preach the gospel and perform miracles in Jerusalem. They're arrested by the Sanhedrin, who were in Jerusalem. That's when Peter makes the statement, we must obey God rather than man. Peter and John are in Samaria. This is a little bit out of Jerusalem, but not much. It's still in that Levant area, the Israel area. Philip is preaching. Peter comes out. This is the spreading of the gospel from Jerusalem. He comes out of Jerusalem to go, and then he comes right back. He's in Jerusalem. He's not coming. Where is he not coming from? Rome. Peter, he goes out to Lydda and Joppa. Lydda and Joppa, I looked them up. That's like saying Jerusalem is Fort Worth. Lydda and Joppa is like North Richland Hills and Hearst. They're close. I don't know if that's extremely accurate, but it should be very close. So he's in the Jerusalem area. Raising Aeneas, or healing Aeneas, raising Dorcas. These are the miracles so that everybody would believe they're the right religion, right? So they can switch over. Acts chapter 10. Where's my lady? She's not here.
Cornelius,
Cornelius. Where's Cornelius?
Caesarea.
Caesarea, 75 miles to the northwest of Jerusalem. Peter leaves Jerusalem to go to Caesarea, Caesarea Maritima. He goes there, and everybody knows that story. That's a crazy important story in the Bible. But then he comes back. When he returns to Jerusalem,
He has to explain himself.
he's got to explain himself.
Yeah.
Okay? But the point is, for this class, he goes back to Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's where he has to go.
He escapes from prison. Herod Agrippa puts him in prison. We know that story. Herod Agrippa is the king of the Romans? Nope. Herod Agrippa is the king of the Jews. He would be in what city? Rome, right? No, it's not Rome. I'm going somewhere with this. Okay? Herod would be in Jerusalem. Now he was, Rome, they were Roman puppets. So, had he been to Rome? I don't know. Acts chapter 15. You read that one. It's just more Peter being a leader at his church.
His church in Jerusalem.
Very good. What city?
Starts with a J. Oh, yeah, Jerusalem. How many years did this go on? All of this? That was all-
For him being in Jerusalem?
Well, yeah.
Or Acts?
No, him being in Jerusalem and the Acts.
From what I understand, he was only in Rome near the end of his life. That's from non-Catholic sources. Catholics will tell you he only was in Rome. They say he was there 30 years or something like that, something crazy. But that's not accurate because you just saw how it's not accurate. And they need him to be there. Why?
They wanted to be the Pope.
He's the first pope. They want him doing everything. He's not ever the elder at Rome.
His bones are there.
And
In
he
Rome.
Well, he got killed there. He got killed in Rome.
The first pope was married then, because he was married.
Yeah, because really it was just an elder. All of your congregations had
You
elders.
know, popes couldn't marry, or they're still not.
Well, they eventually got that way.
But,
At least not legally.
Yeah.
Peter was in Jerusalem 15 years after the cross. That's when the Jerusalem Council took place.
So that would be at least 45, where he's still in Jerusalem. Yeah, that's what you're saying. So a little bit of dating going on there. But there's more than that. You've got Paul's letter. This is even later than 45. In Paul's letter to the Romans, he's greeting all these people. Paul's greeting all these people. You think he would have greeted Peter, one of the biggest apostles? Nope, not mentioned. He's not there. Paul's letters keep showing that Peter is not in Rome. Paul writes in Galatians, Paul has to go back to Jerusalem to meet with Peter. You're now within a decade of Peter dying. There's not much left of Peter. Paul's imprisonment in Rome is described in Acts 28. He just doesn't talk about Peter. He would have. I'm saying he would have. Had Peter been involved in all of that stuff in Rome, had Peter been in Rome, Paul would have been talking about it.
Surely.
So those are just some of the examples of Peter being in Jerusalem. Now we're going to go through all the examples of Peter being a leader in Rome. Write them down.
There's that one.
Those are hard to read.
Here's all the examples in the Bible of Peter just being in Rome, not counting him being a leader in Rome. I'm going to test y'all on that.
Yeah.
You want me to go back? Did you write them down? Here, look. You bet. There's going to be a test of it. He's not in Rome. Peter is, and why is he not in Rome?
He's in Jerusalem.
He might be in Jerusalem.
He's the apostle to the Jews. He's in Jerusalem. It's not his assignment. And now you're starting to wonder, why are you talking about this, Court? I will get back to it. Oh, let me do this slide and then I'll get back to it. Okay? In 1 Peter, he's writing a letter to the Christian Jews. This is important. You need to understand what this is, because a lot of times this is overlooked. To the elect, to the Christians, who are sojourners of the dispersion. The travelers who were spreading out from Jerusalem, who were fleeing Judea, who were getting away. We'll get into all the reasons why they were doing that. But he is calling them the ones of the dispersion. And these are all this area, I believe. I think it's Asia Minor, Turkey.
You know, if there were 3,000 baptized on
Day one.
day of Pentecost, first, you wonder how many more thousands of these, because they were from all over the world. It could have been thousands of converted and gone back. Their home.
I think you have in the Bible, you have multiple examples of thousands
Yeah.
getting baptized into the church, right?
Several groups of thousands.
Yeah, several groups. So it's
We don't know.
it's not a small
about
number.
that thought.
And I think by the 3rd, 4th century, I think most estimates from secular sources even will put the number of Christians just in the Roman Empire alone in the millions. I've never studied that. It makes sense though.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit there and spend any time trying to verify it, but yeah, it was spreading like crazy. But God needed them. Not just needed them, was telling them, get out of Jerusalem. They didn't just say, hey, you want to move? You want to uproot? All of us together just uproot and move to Gentile territory? They're not going to do that on their own naturally. Think about your own families and stuff. That doesn't make any sense. God is telling them to do it. They're being obedient. He's we'll show a few verses later on. He's telling them. And when you get in Revelation, there's a verse that tells them, come out of her, my people. Come out of Judaism. Get away from Israel. Get away from Jerusalem. Don't be a partaker of her sins. Don't be there when her plagues come. They're fleeing Jerusalem. And a lot of them are heading towards the Roman Empire. For safety, this is counterintuitive, for safety from the persecuting Jews. Acts chapter 8, verse 1. And there was great persecution in that day in Jerusalem against the church. They're fleeing that. He was going to destroy them. And we'll see other places. All right. Keep that in your mind. Peter was an elder at the church in Jerusalem. Peter was the apostle to the Jews. He's not in Rome. Keep that in your head. Now shift gears. Babylon, the burden of Babylon, Isaiah chapter 13 and 14. Here we go. This is fun. This is a book. What is this book about? At the very start of the class, when I finally stopped my introduction, I had somebody read it. I think it was you, Carol.
It could have been.
It was you, because I just watched the video today because I'm editing, I'm ready to put them up on YouTube. The book is concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Well, then why are we spending 10, 12 chapters talking about all these other nations? What I'm going to try to show you is that this is a metaphorical Babylon, that this is a type anti-type situation and this is keeping with the theme of Isaiah. This is not Isaiah all of a sudden shifting gears and doing something he hadn't done. He's done it the entire book so far. We've been going through all this, and in that day, Christ would come and be a light unto the Gentiles. I've been going over all that on purpose to show you that these things that were going on during Isaiah's time were really just getting them ready. Paul saying, hey, remember when Isaiah said that there would be a remnant? That's happening today. That's what Isaiah was really talking about. I believe it's this kind of situation. I'm going to try to prove it to you. You don't have to believe me. This is not like the most important part of the Bible. But I think if you want to understand Revelation, this is something that you can go dig into for yourself. So what happens here we're just doing chapter 13 right now. He says in verse 17 that he's going to bring in the Medes to destroy the Babylonian Empire. Does that happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. Cyrus and the Medes, it's well documented all over the place. There's no question. At the hand of the Medes, this army from afar, this Gentile army from afar that he's going to use to destroy Babylon, he says he's going to destroy the whole land. The land was going to be desolate. Verse 9. The land was going to be desolate. There was going to be no life there. In verse 12, so many men would die, it would be very rare to find a man alive. They're just going to get wiped out. Anyone found alive, if the Medes army that were rampaging through Babylon, if the Medes found you, if they found you and they had a sword, you were dead. They killed everybody. All of their kids, all the Babylonians' kids would be cut to pieces in front of their parents. Their women would be raped, and the place would never be inhabited again. Sounds pretty bad, right? What's the problem with all that? What's the problem with all that?
Never happened to Babylon.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen, guys. None of that happens. Yes, the Medes come in and conquer the Babylonian Empire. That's it. That's the end of the similarities. It doesn't happen. What does happen, you can read about from Xenophon, Herodotus, the Cyrus Cylinder, and if you just think about it for half a second, the Bible. So what really happens is Belshazzar is up there having a big party with all the loot from the Jewish temple, right? They're having a big celebration. He's not a good dude. They're having this big party. He sees the writing on the wall, right?
Right.
And then, but while they're doing that, according to Herodotus, what do? How do they get in? How do they get into this great, massive, fortified city? They change the course of the river. They dry up the Euphrates. You see that term in Revelation 18, right? 17, 18, wherever it is. That's in a reference to Cyrus diverting the river so that he could get in, sneak in while they're having a big party with minimal, at best, resistance. The only recorded death, Belshazzar. Xenophon says that there were minor skirmishes throughout the town. There were a couple of little battles and fights. I'm sure other people died. I'm not saying nobody died. I'm just saying the only recorded one is Belshazzar. How much of the city do they desolate and destroy? None. Do they kill everybody in town? No, almost nobody is killed. And by the way, according to the Cyrus cylinder, Cyrus leaves their government in place. They continue to rule. They're just now under the Medo-Persian Empire. He doesn't go out and wipe out the ruling class or anything like that. He leaves them in place. Some of these sources will tell you that the people were welcoming. They didn't like Belshazzar and Nabonidus, his dad, because they were tyrant-type rulers. They're like, yeah, we'll take you. We'd rather have you than them. And Cyrus has said a couple times in the book of Isaiah even, he's the servant of God. So apparently Cyrus is pretty good. So if you had to choose between Belshazzar and Cyrus, you're going to choose Cyrus all day long. Just a much better, well-liked ruler. Belshazzar is not. They're not killed. The place isn't laid desolate. And it says that nobody would ever live there again. Well, you know in the Bible that the Jews continue to live there for a very long time. You know that. Because they have to be told by Darius, go back, leave Babylon. It doesn't happen. Isaiah chapter 13 is not about literal Babylon. What are your options here? What are your options? Option one, Isaiah and God were wrong, and you should quit religion. Let's not pick that one, okay? Nobody pick that. There's a much better route coming up here. Two, and I find this one as corny as it can be, but I'm sure somebody out there thinks it. I've not ran across them. But God, at some point in the future to us, is going to bring back the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire. He's going to bring a new Cyrus, and he's going to have all this happen again, except be more accurate this time. That's just dumb. Baloney, right? So that's not an option. With God, anything is possible, but that's not going to happen. That's dumb, right? Or option three, and this is the one that I'm going to try to sell you on. I can't think of another option, by the way. I thought about this for a while. What are your options? When you read all of the commentators, and again, I did not do that. I had never done that, read commentators on the book of Isaiah, before I started teaching this class. Okay, I did not get my ideas from the commentators. But when they start talking about Isaiah chapter 13, Isaiah chapter 14, they say, a lot of them will say, this doesn't happen. This is mystical Babylon. They call it mystical Babylon. They acknowledge that this prophecy does not literally happen in 539 BC. They acknowledge it. They call it mystical Babylon. I call it figurative Babylon, but it's the exact same thing. So since, I want to say my early 20s, so for 20, 25 years, I have called Babylon in here figurative Babylon. I think it's a metaphor. Isaiah's been using metaphors. That's what I've been trying to get across to y'all the whole time. He's Mr. Metaphor, and he will continue to do so. You need to go back and read it and brush up on it and try to figure out where he's using the metaphors. This is Malachi. This is not Isaiah, but this is God using a metaphor where he doesn't say that it's a metaphor. But we know it is. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet. He doesn't say, I'm going to send you somebody that's like Elijah the prophet. He just goes straight metaphor and doesn't bother to explain it. But we know that it's John the Baptist because in the New Testament we're told, yeah, remember when they said Elijah the prophet was going to come? John is your Elijah. You got to figure it out. You got to understand the metaphor. I think that's what he's doing here. And now I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to go through each of the verses trying to show you what I think mystical Babylon is. This future oppressor of God's people. Okay, does everybody get that? This does not happen. This does not literally happen. It's not close and it's not debated. This is not a who it is debated. Who it's not is not debated. They're all, yeah, this is mystical Babylon. Okay? And I promise you at the beginning of the class tonight, I will not be vague. I will be very specific in who I think mystical Babylon represents. And you should all already know the answer. So let's backtrack a little bit and think about the context that we're in and what we've been doing. What is Isaiah called? What's his nickname? Messianic prophet. He's really ultimately concerned with the first century, the coming of Christ and the church. Do we have figurative Babylons in the New Testament? When Babylon is irrelevant? Real literal Babylon is irrelevant? It's almost at its end by the time the New Testament gets there? Do we have some? Well, yeah. One, book of Revelation.
Yeah. 18.
Revelation 17:18. 16, 17, 18. 17:5. And upon her forehead was a name written in mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. So we've got a figurative Babylon in the New Testament. Could they be talking about the same thing? I don't know. We're going to dig into it. And I've already spent a lot of time. The class number 3, which will be up on YouTube very shortly. I'm finally done figuring it all out. Class number 3, you can go back and watch. I've gone out of my way to show that Jerusalem, apostate Jerusalem, Judaism, the Jews, that is the harlot. I can't use that as a proof. That's circular arguing. You understand that? I'm trying to prove Babylon is the harlot. So I can't say, see, Babylon is the harlot, therefore Babylon is the harlot. You can't do that. So I'll just use other stuff. Is there another example of a figurative Babylon in the New Testament? Guys, where was Peter an elder? Where did Peter do all of his work in the Bible? Peter was the apostle to the Jews. 1 Peter 5, writing to those people in Asia Minor, he says, I'm an elder. I'm writing to you as an elder. You're the elders up there, I'm the elder here. I'm not going to fill you in on 1 Peter 5, but he ends with, the church here at Babylon is with you. we salute you, and so does the elders there, and so does my son Marcus. Where's Peter? He's the apostle at Jerusalem. He's not the apostle at Rome. He never was.
And he's calling Jerusalem Babylon.
He's calling Jerusalem Babylon because of the massive oppression that they were going under at the hand of the Jews. I need somebody to read the first, read Acts 8, verse 1. This is just the one I want to focus on, but there's a bunch. And as we're going through Isaiah 13 here, verse by verse, you're going to see how every single verse applies to Judah and Jerusalem. Somebody read Acts 8, verse 1.
Saul agreed with putting him to death. On that day, a severe persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem.
Okay, that's it. What happened? A severe persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem. This is long before Nero Caesar is at the helm. Nero Caesar starts persecuting the Christians in 64 AD, almost at the end of the apostles' work. And you get all of Acts. You just get example after example. Go read Acts chapter 12. Herod. What was his wife's name? What was that lady's name? Queen. Let's start with a B. What was her name? Bernice. Was that it?
Yeah, Agrippa's.
What? Beatrice?
And Bernice. Yeah. Every reference to him in all of literature, including the Bible, only if Agrippa's mentioned, it's also and Bernice.
Because from my understanding, Bernice, Beatrice, whatever her name is, she wore the pants in the family.
Bernice, go sit down.
And I don't think she was that pleasant. John the Baptist's beheading. Right? Is it Bernice or Beatrice? Which one is Bernice? Bernice. Right? Y'all remember John the Baptist's beheading? Okay. Agrippa, this was pre-persecution. And she tricks Herod into cutting John's head off and serving it on a platter. She's not a good woman. Well, she's always in there. She's in that chapter. She's in Acts chapter 12. So I'm going to try to show you, at least get you to open up to the idea that the Babylon in Isaiah 13 is figurative for Jerusalem. The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so does my son Marcus. This is coming from Peter, the apostle to the Jews.
You know, there's an interesting play on the spelling of Babylon in the Old Testament. And it may be as simple as this, like the Tower of Babel, right? There's actually no spelling difference between Babylon and Babel. In Genesis, the Tower of Babel, and the references to Babylon in the Hebrew, they're spelled identical. There's like not even a glyph difference between them. It's just called Babylon later on. And so whether you go to Genesis or you go all the way to Revelation, the city of disobedience, Babylon, figurative, is all throughout the Bible.
There's something to that. There's something to that. Let me finish up on this Peter point real quick. Peter, who did I say was the apostle of? The Jews. Where was he an elder? Jerusalem. He's writing from the church at Babylon to the elect who are spreading out in the dispersion, to the ones that are leaving Jerusalem. They are leaving Babylon, mystical, figurative Babylon. Oh, I got y'all to turn here. I forgot I had it on the next page. And now you can read the rest of the verse. You can just read it up here if you want. Can you see?
Yes, and they were all scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles.
Don't read that part yet.
Oh, I thought that's what you asked for.
I know, we're getting to that. That's the main point.
To
The dispersion.
To our sojourners of the dispersion.
To the sojourners of the dispersion, they that were scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, the ones that were fleeing Jerusalem, because he was telling them, come out of her, my people. So they all got out of Dodge. But who didn't? Specifically, Peter. The Bible tells you he doesn't leave Jerusalem. Everybody else was part of this dispersion except the apostles. Now, Paul and Barnabas they're sent off to the Gentile. Paul's missionary journeys, all of that. Peter is an elder of the church in Jerusalem, the church at Babylon. It's this, what did you call it? This spiritual city of disobedience. Does Jerusalem fit that? In 60-something AD? In 50-something AD? In 30 AD when they kill Christ? Are they the spiritual city of disobedience? Yes, massively. They're guilty of the blood of the saints and the prophets. Go read Matthew 23 again. Read basically all of Acts. Don't forget the part about where they killed Christ. Stephen, they stoned Stephen. You have all of these examples. Another thing I like to think of is, because some people say Babylon is Rome. I don't believe that at all. Okay, there's a couple of characteristics of Babylon in Revelation that do fit Rome, but they fit multiple cities. So it's not, they aren't exclusive characteristics. But if Rome is this great persecutor, why is everybody moving towards Rome?
Yeah.
Why are they the dispersion is taking them closer to Rome? That makes no sense. Babylon is not Rome. And you will hear everybody say, you walk out of this room, you go talk to 12 elders. Probably all 12 of them will tell you it's Rome. Okay? Not that big a deal that they don't agree. It's I don't think it's a salvation issue at all. I just think that if you get down and actually dig into it, I think that you will see it. I think you will have more fun with it. I think you will be able to use the book of Revelation more as a tool instead of that's so hard, I don't know. I think you can. I think you can know. Do I have every single detail right? No, I don't. Okay? Not going to pretend that. And I'm constantly trying to learn, and you learn more when you teach, right?
True enough.
So much. So I've learned a lot just prepping for this class. Because when I'm not prepping for this class and I'm just reading through it, I'll be reading through, oh, I have no idea what that means. Whatever, I'm going to skip it, I'll come back to it later. I can't do that. I can't do that here. I've got to know. Revelation 18:4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. Be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not the insanely ironic plagues that Egypt got at their beginning. Egypt got them at their beginning, they got them at their end. This dispersion. They needed to spread the gospel. Great Commission, right? Y'all know what that is. Don't partake in her sins. Don't be destroyed. Get out of her. Matthew chapter 24 and Luke 21, I think. These are parallel accounts. When you see the abomination of desolation, when you see Jerusalem encompassed by the Roman army, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, get out of town. Let them that which be in Judea flee. Disperse from Jerusalem. If you're in Judea, flee. him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. If you're out in the field, don't come back in to get your clothes. You better hope you're not with a little kid, because that's just annoying it all the time, right? I've got 4 myself. Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath. Because why?
Don't be destroyed.
You don't want to be part of this. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. It will be the one single worst time on the planet. That one day that they break down those gates, or they were opened or whatever, and they come in and they destroy Jerusalem. Roman army does it in a little over a 24-hour period. And it's bad. It's bad. By the way, most people I think now are Matthew 24 is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. They started figuring out that word world is a mistranslation. It's really saying when is the end of the Jewish age. But occasionally you're going to run into somebody that thinks Matthew 24, this is talking about the end of time. Some version of the end of time. My question to them is,
How would you run back and get some?
yeah, all of that, but just focus on the last one. This is the one I focus on. Why do we care if the end of the world is going to come in winter? Herb probably welcomed that. Right? He's not a fan of the cold in here.
That's a clue on that Sabbath day. They couldn't-
Yes,
they couldn't-
I'll let you tell it. Why is this important?
The Jews couldn't travel over 1 mile, I think.
There's more to it than that. That's absolutely correct. So what is the on top of that, or because they could not travel, what happened? Oh, think about it. Anybody know? They could not travel from Jerusalem more than a certain small distance.
Couldn't be ugly.
So because they could not travel, what did the city do? You could not get out of the city. The gates were closed. If it's the end of the world, do we care? No, that's dumb.
No.
That's dumb. But if you see the Roman army arrive and you're told to get out immediately, go as fast as you can, do nothing, get out of town as fast as you can, pray that it's not on Saturday, because those gates will be closed and you won't be able to get out. And I think they did pray, because it didn't happen on a Saturday when the Roman army shows up, because they were all able to get out. No Christians were found in Jerusalem when the Romans destroyed it. And it did not happen in the winter. They start showing up in, I guess they start their movement up in March of that year. And then they start the siege around Passover, something like that. You could go back and read Tacitus and Josephus and all of those guys. They kind of describe the siege leading up. And the city and the temple are destroyed on Tish B'Diav, which I equate to the 9th of August. I don't know if that's right, but that's more or less what it means. It's a famous Jewish day of mourning. And I want to say that the first time the temple was destroyed, it was also on that day, which is, that's God doing that. That's not, if that's accurate. I don't know if it's accurate. Isaiah is using a massive amount of metaphors. I'm saying that he's using Babylon and the Medes as metaphors for the messianic message that he's giving. Peter was the apostle to the Jews and an elder at the church at Jerusalem. The dispersion was the people leaving Jerusalem, dispersing out from Jerusalem from that massive persecution. I just put a few examples of persecution. It's full of them. You know how many full-on, well-documented examples of Roman persecution there are in the Bible? None. Somebody got put in jail one time for a misunderstanding, and that's it. Paul, I think. And that's it. You can't say that's massive, world's worst persecution ever, and oh, hey, Paul got put in jail, therefore Rome is Babylon. It's just not in there.
And the Romans were like, oh, he's a Roman citizen, so
Get him out.
Yeah.
get him out. He's got rights.
Thank you. It's not in there. Roman persecution. Now, it does happen. Know your history. It does happen, and it happens off and on. Nero does it. I've heard a lot of debate. I would love to talk to y'all later about this, the doctor and the master. Domitian, I've heard, does not. People in the church will tell you Domitian does. You go talk to secular historians, which I have done many times, they will say, no, Domitian doesn't persecute the Christians. The only people you hear saying that are Christians, wanting Revelation to be about the destruction of Rome in some way. Isaiah is a book about Judah and Jerusalem. Let's plug in. I'm suggesting to you that mystical Babylon could be figurative for Judah and Jerusalem. What we're going to start, do we have class next week?
No.
No.
Oh, bad timing. We have the funeral thing, right?
Yep. And then we have Thanksgiving Eve the week after.
Yeah. And people get traveling. so we'll have
Terrible
other
timing.
people.
So we're off a couple of weeks.
We'll be gone too.
Mhm.
Okay. Y'all don't forget this stuff.
December.
Oh no, we're gonna get back and y'all are gonna be in Christmas shopping mode and you're not gonna remember. I'm just gonna ask you where was Peter and Apostle?
Michael's taking notes. I'm watching him.
The videos will be online by
You're
then.
right.
They will be online.
You're exactly right.
So when we get back, whenever we get back, as an exercise, what I hope y'all will permit me to do is everywhere where it says Babylon, we're gonna put in Jerusalem. And we're gonna see if the verse works or if there's a cross-reference to the New Testament, like I said in the beginning of this class. Everywhere it says King of Babylon, we're going to put in King of the Jews, Herod, the Herods, okay? And I want y'all to see how that works out. You do not have to agree with me, you do not have to believe me, but I guarantee you this will be one of the only times you ever hear somebody specifically making a suggestion as to what mystical Babylon actually represents.
Should we pray that the Lord not return in the next 3 weeks?
Oh, I don't want to
be
go
okay.
that far.
So if he does, then we get all the correct answers.
We get it sooner,
We
don't
get the
we?
right answers, not my answers.
Back of the book there.
You just put the-
The back of the book. I'm okay with that. So, all right. Anybody got any questions? Anything else? Did I go
Yeah.
good speed today?
Yep,
Okay.
And
I've
very-
had 10 different people tell me slow down.
very clear, appreciate it.
Okay. I'm working on that. I'm not a trained teacher, but I'm doing my best.
Well, I wonder what, you say.
No more questions.
Oh, no. No, I was gonna use what Tom said about the word Babylon going all the way from Genesis to Revelation.
Yes.
You know, we have slang words that mean something to us that someone in a foreign country might not get it. We have our own slang lingo. But I'm wondering if that was kind of a biblical slang word that they,
There's not a lot to it, because Babylon's an actual city about this time. Like, it's not, it's a historical, it's actually called Babylon historically, right? So it's not a metaphor at that point, but it's intriguing that it's the same spelling that goes all the way back to Genesis. And so I've looked at it, I'm not sure what to make of it. I gotta be honest. I mean, it could be slang, it could be, you know, it's one of those things where, depending on the authorship timing of like Genesis and the authorship timing of Isaiah and the authorship timing of these other ones, you know, how does it all work out? Like, it's possible. Like, one of the things I heard was that Babel is actually where Babylon ended up becoming, but that's a little bit of a hard arc to make, because the geographical references right after the flood are pretty hard to be pinpoint about.
Where's Mount Ararat and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe it is that, it's possible, but it seems to me more interesting, the idea that it is both a a literal and a figurative for what I said earlier, a city of disobedience.
Yeah.
From the very limited information I have, and I've looked at this maybe once in my life and did not dig into it. To me, I think this is where they were saying Ararat was. Armenia, the Utoro, what's that kingdom? In the Armenian kingdom, the Utaros, I don't know, it was an ancient one.
I don't know.
Anyway, I think they say it's up there. I don't know. Don't listen to me on that. I've done no work on that.